media, the church, all these components that we have in the society, where do they come in? Do we, as maybe in this ecosphere of media, have we also been irresponsible in terms of trying to vet some of these, clips and the videos that we put on air, that they have a foul, language? We've seen the textbooks that you talked about also, that even amazingly, they have been listed in the orange list by the Ministry of Education. You see, and then they go full steam ahead and say, of course, we have other books from the orange list that you can pick from if you found there are books with foul language. Do we have people who proofread, before they list these particular books in the orange list? That is another question. But let's just open the discussion on the media, the church, and different facets of the society, that we have all this wheel, but different cogs that is spinning this wheel as well. Let's just begin with you, Stella, briefly.
I think the first thing I'll say, Dibal, is that in this conversation, we must accept that someone must take the blame to begin with. We cannot afford to go on, and I think as Kenyans, we're very, we are trained, we are nurtured not to drop responsibility on anybody. So we prefer having conversations where we say, no, I'm not blaming, and especially in all the conversations I've held with people, I've realized parents do not even want to hear it. I think you heard Dr. talking about the book that was called What is Wrong with This Child, and he says many people did not read it. I am likely to submit that it was the topic, because parents do not want to hear that there's something wrong with their children, even if there is. But in the end, when you stop to think about it, if the teacher doesn't teach your child what they need to learn, if the media feeds your child with nonsense, if the church eventually does not manage to teach them what they need to teach them because you don't take the child to church, if eventually everybody else you're trusting to teach your child doesn't do it, at the end of the day, the responsibility is your own. And any failure on that child reflects on who you are. And I agree with Nancy, the kind of parent you become and the kind of person you prepare yourself to be for your child is what they will become. But having said that, once we locate that responsibility and the power to change things to the parent, then they can reach out to everyone else. They can tell the pastor in church, please work with my child on this. I'm struggling to guide them. Tell the teacher, I'm trying to get my child to respond to me better, and he's not responding better. Maybe teach him how to respond, better language, blah, blah, blah. But it's not something that you expect somebody else to take before you. Number two, the government has a huge responsibility. And I know we shouldn't give the government a carte blanche to just do anything, because if we allow them, they could actually limit a lot. However, for children, the government has a responsibility to create a very safe space for them to grow up. In creating a safe space, one of the things they need to regulate is how much our children are exposed to. In the United States of America, in Europe, if it is even discovered that your child is exposed to things they shouldn't be exposed to, they are taken away from you by the government. So our government has done a really great job by just telling you that maybe you need to change this about how you're taking care of your child. In other places, they're taken away, and mothers cry tears claiming they love their child, but the child is taken away. What am I saying? I'm saying the government should take its place in regulating this. And for this reason, the fact that certain things have found their ways into our books without anybody being consulted on this matter, for me, is a matter of corruption. I told you when I started that I'm looking for how corruption has found its way here. Why is it a matter of corruption? Somebody somewhere is being paid colossal amounts of money to read, to review material, to confirm what classifications these books come in. How is it that this person has not noticed that there's something wrong with those books and they should not be classified on the orange list? And this is a problem, and for example, we cannot even afford to open this conversation today, because this is not just a problem with morality and how it finds its way in our books. This is a problem with everything that is in our curriculum, including what you're teaching about leadership, what you're teaching about corruption, what you're teaching about social skills. So really, this is a conversation we probably will have on another day. But then for this particular conversation, somebody has the responsibility of checking that this doesn't get to the children. And I'm sure they know what to look out for. So it just means someone just dropped the ball, but they have been paid money to do the job. So I'm very keen on finding out who exactly this is and how they're still sitting wherever they're
Interesting
sitting.
Also that from the Ministry of Education, they're saying Education Ministry directs schools to strictly select textbooks from official orange list in face of vulgar storybook. And for me, this is speaking from both sides of the mouth, because yes, if you're telling us to strictly, select textbook from official orange list, and still this particular book is listed in the orange list, what are you telling us? Right? Somebody is sleeping on the job. How did he actually skip or slip into be in the orange list in the first place? Right? And of course, these books you've mentioned, Blood Ties is one of them. We have foul language or that we cannot also just let it also trip off our tongue this morning, because it is not palatable for our viewers as well. But the question is, they will say, of course, if it's not in the orange list, we have Mills and Boons. Nancy Drews that you read, for them that will let me as well, right? That had all these stories, and of course you had all these foul language as well. They exposed to so many storybooks. Where then are we making all hula baloo about what is in the orange list, Diana?
Right. Thank you for that, Dibal. I think Blood Ties was what the ministry tried to defend, because it's a South African written book. South African author wrote the book, and they were claiming that the book has certain values and principles that our kids or the kids in the society are consuming, which is maybe how to defend themselves against bullying, how to defend themselves or speak up when someone is being inappropriate with them, whether they're touching them or whatever. But then it came to a point where there is actually a word, a vulgar word that was used when, I think it was a child expressing themselves. And we were like, then the kid will be like, I read this in the book, so I'm expressing myself the way I want to express myself. And I think that's where the conversations came in. So I don't know whether, I'm really hoping that the government people will do their job and ensure that such books are limited, especially to the access of the kids. I'll speak as a youth, and I'll also speak for the young people that we deal with. I like what Nancy said, the responsibility to actually be an accountable person, to uphold integrity and respect for yourself, and even live in a dignified manner in such a way that whatever you say in private, and if it's publicized, you're held accountable to it, and you can stand in front of your parents and say, as youth are not teenagers anymore. Actually, youth is between 18 to 35 in Kenya as per the definition. Even though I hear the current census is going to tell us that we are not even a youthful nation anymore. Apparently, our median age is coming down to 14. And this is unverified, but this is based on the data that people are receiving. That 14 is going to be the age of Kenya. So I'm like, shivering a bit, knowing that Daktari is here telling us that that's the experimental age. So we're going to be an experimental nation. But then how are we responsible towards each other? I like saying the fact that I'm a firstborn, and I think in my family I was the head girl. I was always accountable when mama and dad are not in the house. I'm the one who is in charge. Even the house lady knew that Diana is in charge. She's the one going to see if any of my brothers did anything, I was in charge. So again, individual responsibility. We have to nurture kids and youths in a society who are held accountable to what they do in private. I did do things in my younger days as well, which now I'd be like, what did I do? And now I'm glad to even hear, again, Daktari tell us, that's okay. It was your experimental years. And so now, imagine if, again, I loved the quotation of the philosophers. I really loved philosophy, where if you see a kid or a teenager who is not experimental, there's a problem. Knowing that these mental illnesses can be diagnosed early is another problem. We were at the University of Nairobi talking about femicide. We start hearing that it starts from someone's mind, and no one has done a crime alone. Apparently, people actually collude. The young man who killed a student at the University of, was it University of Nairobi or the Moi University? Moi University. Had actually told people, I'm angry, I'm going to do this. The personal friend to the lady who was killed had been informed. In fact, she was the informal communication was going on. So how are we as a nation, or as a people, when Stella tells me she's angry about something, and she tells me, I'm so pained, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to do something. As a responsible neighbor or sister or friend to her, what am I supposed to do? That act of responsibility that we should not place on the church alone, we should not place on government alone, individual responsibility. Are we accountable human beings? Let us try and be a bit more strong on that, because I feel like if we keep, let's say, pushing the responsibility to other people, then we're not really accountable. For example, if I know my neighbor has done this, it is my responsibility to let the neighborhood people know that I've seen something that is not right here. I have seen a kid, someone being inappropriate with a child. I've seen someone doing something, wrong. I've seen a weapon being, unleashed in public, and I saw it. So you must tell someone. So there's a responsibility that we as a people, individual responsibility again, that we need to now start owning up to changing things. Such that if there's a kid in your neighborhood that plays with your child and turns out to be someone who spews profanity, even you have a problem as a parent who even maybe takes the responsibility of taking care of these kids. Yeah.
So you raised the issue of paying number between Deng, and you're asking who is listening to the youth, right? Have we been, our conscience has been seared all the time with these pictures and the aspect of mass media culture that we're being bombarded with, that truly has numbed us, that no one is listening anymore. Even when we see these particular videos, we cannot really, feel that this is something that should concern us, because it becomes something that is normalized.
About the discussion of youth particularly is so much easier to have when we talk statistics, or we talk about, youth in general terms. And this is where I'd like to pick up on something Nancy said, that this is individual stories. It's in those individual stories that you begin to discover what really is happening in society. You will discover stories of pain, stories of brokenness, stories of loss, stories of hopelessness. And it is why I would say it cannot remain an individual's story. It must become a society problem, because these individuals' stories accumulate into what is who we are. And I'd like to suggest that there has to be boundaries. We cannot say, and I always, hesitate to disagree with my learned doctor friend here, because he sort of has a final word. These are things he has studied, he has taught. When we talk about this is the age of experimentation, or this is the age of having fun and discovery and so on, nobody would disagree with that. But if there are no boundaries, there are no common understandings of what is right and wrong, and we keep pushing this boundary, keep pushing it from generation to generation, at some point something goes wrong. And it seems like we've lost this sense of moral guidance, because a young person, just like a student in a classroom, will push the teacher to see how far they can get away before they realize you don't cross this line. Where are our boundaries? And I think we need to agree as a society, get back to the values that will guide, so that we don't cross that line. I think a teenager will grow up, and the majority, I'm afraid to say, are not, and it's not the 10% who are falling off the rails. I'm afraid to even look at that. We may find we have 60%, Dr. Njenga, falling off the rails. Maybe in 1933, in America, there were 10% falling off the rails. This is Kenya, a country where 0.1% of our society owns just about everything. The rest are scrambling to make ends meet. And they wake up every day looking, if they have a mirror, look and you see the face of a poor person. So you operate as a poor person. You interact as a hopeless person, and you begin to push those boundaries to a place where it could get very dangerous. So I'm really, just to summarize, I really believe that we cannot, one, leave this at the statistics level, talk about general terms. We must understand, but in understanding this, it must bring us back to what must society agree on as our rules, our boundaries, the values that we hold dear, that when somebody crosses those lines, we say, no, that is wrong, get back in here. But knowing very well, some people will cross and go. This is life.
It's life, right. Yeah. Let's see from Nancy, because you raised the issue of where we are as a reflection of who we are as a society. And maybe you can take some time to also expand who you were saying prepare us as individuals. You had also the blessings of being in a very stable home state. You turned out to be what you were. And in light of what Prof is saying, that this is a space of experimenting, what is really coming to the public lexicon is the word or the phrase, safe spaces, safe spaces for the youth, safe spaces for a teenager. I think we can discuss around
you're going to develop into a very imbalanced person. And I think that we need to, one, forget about government. Why? Government is also made up of people who are not yet fully developed as individuals. And I think that a level of responsibility from government is a space for anybody who will develop self-leadership, self-responsibility, and take it up. And I think that we need to consider the journey of a person. And again, the young people need to know this is your best time to develop yourself. When you get a baby, you don't have a lot of luxury to grow. And so as you experiment, and I did, and teachers in Buruburu Girls will, if they're watching, will tell you, I tested them and asked questions and said, no, you're wrong, and did a lot of punishments for it. But my journey was about discovering me. And currently, teenagers are discovering each other. Wamlambez, Wamnyonyez means they're interacting in ways they're not ready for. And that then they will not grow. When a plant begins to bear fruit too early, they're not going to be good fruits. They're not going to be useful, they're not going to serve us. And so yes, he talks about boundaries, and these are lessons that there is a part that is an individual has to play, and there is a part that society has to play. And I think that the greatest, when it comes to the family unit, the greatest gift a child should get is time with the parents. They know that they matter. And at a point, you can now actually neglect them, and they will be fine. Because they walked with you, they felt you, and they know you care for them. And I'm telling you, I was loved when I was very young. And when I was in high school, I didn't need anybody. I read the right books. I picked Think Big. I picked books that talked about personal development. I went to the library and read books about psychology. Why? Not because my father said, Nancy, go read this good book. No, because I had felt I was valued, and therefore I want to grow and develop, and that I matter. And the greatest cry of them, because they are majority, it's not 10% going off the rail. I interact with high school students almost on a daily basis, university students, college students. Many are going the wrong direction, and they're lost, and they have no clue who to ask for direction. Because they say, but look at mom and dad. What are they going to tell me, really? It seems like I have to guide them and be the strong one in the family. And so again, even as we have this discussion, it goes back to the family unit. We are asking parents to give time. The woman and the man are now working. Who is going to give time? How much time? And we must be really practical, because I told you it's 24 hours. If you have 3 babies, it's still 24 hours. If you have 4, it's still 24 hours. And yes, they must as well provide for these kids. And so it's really it's a very hard balancing act, and we must share these stories with the young people to know after 25 you may not get time for yourself. So now is the time to grow and do it, self-actualize. It has to be all round, psychologically, emotionally, financially. You have to grow now. And parents, when they admit that they're struggling, this will change the story. Say that I did not do certain things when I was your age, and I'm telling you, it's hard. Sometimes I wake up and want to cry when I look at you people, and you want me to provide and all of these things. And when parents tell us this, I'm telling you, young people will listen. But you can't pretend you have it all together, and you don't, and then try and tell this young person, get it together, you need to be serious. No, we have to be honest. Parents are struggling with infidelity, with families that are not working, but we're not being straightforward with this. How many parents are in a relationship where it's not working? And they pretend it's working. You guys be serious, go to school. It's not working, and we can see it as children. And when you lie to us, then you tell us to go and we want you to do better, but we see you are struggling, then it doesn't work.
Right, thank you.
It doesn't work.
Prof, let's come to you, because you raise the aspect of experimenting, and I mentioned the safe spaces as well. And of course, you're given that latitude as a young person, maybe with your parents, to go and experiment, so to speak, or maybe you're oblivious, or you're oblivious to the fact also they're experimenting. But where is the safe space? Because you can experiment also with drugs. You can experiment with those, promiscuity. You can experiment with a lot of things. Where is the boundary that we let our teenage, have their space, but where are the safe spaces? Are we aware of these safe spaces as well? So where do we actually have that demarcation line?
Okay, it's now clear to me.
Yeah.
Number one, that I'm in the minority. Number two, that my views don't matter anymore. and I really must say less and less, because it's clearly not going to work. Why do I say that? I say that because there is a time when I was a young man and was blessed with a great deal of optimism, and I set out, like I see here, to solve and resolve all the problems of the world in one morning. As you can see, I didn't succeed. My central thesis this morning is not that we don't have a problem. Of course we have a problem. My further thesis is that we have a growing problem. If you look at the divorce rates, not in America, but even in our society, if you look at people who suffer pain at the family level, if you look at the number of people who suffer domestic violence, if you look at the number of people who are abusing drugs, if you look at the number who suffer from liver cirrhosis, which is a surrogate for alcohol use, if you look at the number of people committing suicide, it's the youth. And these are serious and growing. So that is not my thesis. We have a problem, and we have a growing problem.
We have a problem?
My problem, because I have a problem as well, is that I am a scientist, and I am driven only by evidence. And I cannot enjoy the luxury of speaking without evidence. Let me give you one or two examples. The first one, and I try to say this again, eloquence is going away, so again, people don't understand what I'm saying. 75% of all mental illness is diagnosable by the age of 24. That's the youth that we're talking about. What I'm saying is that any person under the age of 24 who commits suicide is suffering from a depressive illness that has not been diagnosed until somebody proves otherwise. Those are the facts. I have feelings, but as a scientist, I cannot stand here and express those ones. What I am saying, and I'm trying to say, maybe I will not succeed, maybe I'll succeed, is that the human person, when he is born, has developmental stages. The first stage, we are told, is just to suck your mother's breast and then eliminate it. That's the way it is. Then you go to standard 1, then you go to... By the time you reach Form 1, the way your body is biologically constructed is that you're an experimenter. By the time you reach 24, you should have finished university and should be doing other things. Every age, and we can go into Piaget stages of development, has its own prescribed correct activities. If you don't behave teenager when you're a teenager, you will reach my age and then start behaving like a teenager. You'll fall down and break all your limbs. So what I'm saying is that let's not try to change a teenager and make him a 30-year-old. Let us acknowledge that this is social development, this is biological development, and react to them as society, as parents, in the knowledge that you cannot stop a river flowing downstream. When they reach their 20s and early 30s, they will change and they will become adults. It is when, again, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what the writing tells me. It's when you try to treat a 16-year-old like his 27-year brother. They're not the same. They're different people. Every developmental stage has appropriate interventions. I'm saying, so I'm not saying these Wamlambez things are good. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying I can understand them because that is a reflection of biological development, social development in a 16-year-old boy or girl. Let's understand them for that, and then let's intervene appropriately. Am I saying there are no big problems, for goodness sake? But let's understand them by looking at the hormonal changes, social changes, physical changes as well in these boys and girls. Yes.
Right, thank you. Maybe as we bring also this conversation to a close, we can hear from... I can see you standing at the leash to say something, Stella, before I ask my question.
Yes, I am. And what I'm struggling with, Dibal, is because I don't want us to walk out of this studio without creating a connection between what Dr. is saying and the solutions that we're trying to offer. Number one, if we are going to, and we should take what Dr. is saying because he studied about this, that a teenager is an experimenter. The question is, how do we behave in an environment where we have an experimenter and we know if we allow them, they will do everything. This is where I agree with Pete, number one, that boundaries are important. And if you do not create boundaries, the experimenter will become anything and everything. Number two, boundaries today cannot be set by just one person, the parent, because unfortunately the parent today, as Nancy is trying to explain to us, is not present all the time. So other people need to take the responsibility to create boundaries. Indeed, if you observe certain people in this society of ours today, you can very easily tell which high school they went to. And I'm pleased to inform the audience that Nancy and I went to the same high school. And I know she does not realize it now, probably, but she will realize that someday that there are boundaries that were created. I only discovered later that they impacted my life. Can we have, and unfortunately now teachers are overwhelmed. So they don't have time to raise your child for you. But they have a role to play. Are we able to ease them off some of the assignments we put in their hands now so that they have a little bit more room to nurture children? After we do that, let us take advantage of the church. The beauty of the church is that nobody will turn you away with a stubborn child. Nobody will turn you away with a stubborn youth. I am pastored by Bishop Alan Kuna, and one day he surprised me when he preached about a topic I thought was extremely important, and we have been speaking to the youth about Instagram and the fact that it is a marketplace. It is not your home. It is not the place where you go and seek love. It is a marketplace like Toy Market and Gikomba. Walk in there, sell what you need to sell, buy what you need to buy, walk out. But if you live there and try to seek affirmation, love, attention, belonging in that space, you will get lost because nobody is real on Instagram. Nobody is real on Facebook. People put the best image of themselves there and then they walk out and wallow in self-pity. Okay? We must then also look at the need to ensure that we have an understanding of what values, morals, and boundaries we want to give our children. And I disagree entirely with Nancy that we should keep the government out of this. We cannot. There are two entities in this conversation that cannot be let off the hook. One is the parent, number two is the government. And the government is because it's the government that gives the parent the space to raise their child in. The parents is because they're the ones who took the responsibility to bring that soul on earth.
Right, thank you. Diana, your closing remarks briefly.
Yes, my closing remarks would be, I think as an organization, because I want to pick up with what Pete said in terms of being solution makers. Like we should actually be presenting solutions when we come to discuss issues that affect our society. And the solution that we have as Youth Agenda is that we usually try to have conversations with the legislators. So our very simple solution is to legislate.
Yes.
Now, in this specific topic, I think legislation is there. The question then becomes about comes to implementation, and that's where when we see someone who is moderating or regulating the content that we see on media, we want to call him the moral cop, and we want to youths have gone on social media to again abuse, the CEO of the Kenya Film Classification Board. And we're like, no, censorship is necessary. Regulation is important. So from where I sit, I think we need to see where are the gaps. The implementation. Some people must be held to account on the mistakes they did, on allowing these textbooks to sit in commercial centers which were sold to kids. Some books actually had been listed on the orange list. Someone has to take responsibility. So a solution I'm presenting today is not really legislation or regulation. They are there. When you look at our constitution, you follow the other, the policies that follow it. They're very good. Why don't we now implement it? And implementation takes people. People takes me and you. It takes the leaders. It takes the civil servants, the public servants. That's what we need to do. So beyond regulation and legislation, I'm proposing that now it's time for implementation and punishment. Now, this is not discipline. This is punishment for the people who deliberately allow these things to be in the stores, allow bad content to be consumed by the public. We have to have now deliberate punishment so that it is not now sensationalized and made to seem like there's glory and you get celebrity status because you're propagating things that are not good for public consumption.
I'll be remiss if also we don't really touch on this, what is on the, because I know this also is bound to also maybe spark a debate in light of this, and we had Nancy also talking about family setup, and things are not really right sometimes in the family. We have the Daily Nation today. This is our look, so of course if I zoom out, and they have this sidebar story here. The question is, love, when marriage turns to murder. There's a survey here, and it says that can we stay unions happier and also last longer? This is a study, a majority of youth who get married with a lot of fanfare and end up in unhappy unions compared to those in come-we-stay unions, according to a recent survey. And the story continues on page 3. Because of interest of time, we can't really delve deeper on this. But Pete and Daktari on this, maybe you can give us a snippet of what we are at as far as this particular study is concerned. Of course, maybe you've not already read the survey itself, but looking critically on what they're saying, come we stay, as opposed to the fanfare and the hoopla that goes with, maybe church weddings. What would be, where are we at? And what sort of a societal construct are we having on this?
Well, I'm glad this topic of family came up, although I think we haven't had time to really delve into it. I don't think there are many people who will disagree that there's a breakdown that is happening, and perhaps at an increasing rate, where the definition of family is becoming more and more confused. Children are growing up not knowing who their fathers are. In fact, I would venture to say, and I dare to throw out statistics, even though I've not done the research, I would dare to say maybe half or more of children growing up in this country, from west to east to north to south, are in dysfunctional so-called homes. If you use the term, the definition of family that we tend to want to use in our discussions. And if that's where they're coming from, then really we're leaving the children, talking to them in generalities and not understanding that they are individuals who have individual stories that need to be dealt with. Let me just close with this, Dibal. The individual is important on the side of the youth, those who are, we're talking about here, the subject of our conversation. The individual is equally important on the side of leadership. That we can talk about them or the government or whatever, but this is where people watching this show, people in this country who have been educated, blessed, and given opportunity, sit back and blame somebody else and will not jump into the fray and provide solutions.
Right. Nancy, your closing remarks.
I want to close by saying that at the center of this conversation, and I acknowledge the fact that there are developmental stages, and my take is that then we need to be going through the stages with the aim of becoming better. And therefore I throw out personal development and lifelong learning. If we do that at every stage, wherever you are, if you're in government, if you're a parent, if you're a student, the idea is that you become better. Learn from those that have gone before you. Learn from the situation you're in right now. Then we can have progress. Because I'm for progress. That even if a teenager is experimenting, it's for betterment. They draw a lesson. Then it's worth it. Otherwise, it becomes death. There is no growth. So I propose that those that can to join my personal development academy, open for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Let's hear from Dr. Frank and Njenga, your closing remarks.
Very quickly, I'll say this.
On that particular story,
on the Friday, the 20th of September, 1963,
yes,
Prime Minister Jomo Kenyatta said, "We will protect our wild animals." That's what he said. Yesterday we were talking about the Mau. I want to tell you this. This story will not die. It will be there. When you're old, like you'll talk about this, the same things. So let's live in the comfort and knowledge that we actually engage in a lively, engaging conversation that will go on from one generation. It's not the end, number one. Number two, it's possible for all of us to be right in a different way. It's not that you're right, I'm wrong. Or problems come when two rights strike against it. And finally, and I say this whatever time you invite me, and please don't call me, the majority of parents who watched this program this morning, the majority of parents who got up this morning, took their teenage children to school, are normal people, are healthy people, and bring up children like these ones. So even as we acknowledge those who are falling off the rails, for goodness sake, the majority of parents in this country are good, solid parents who bring up this kind of people.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Frank Njenga. Be encouraged, parents. I want to thank your panelist, Stella Agara, also Diana Sifuna, Peter Ndang, also Nasi Wangome, and also Dr. Frank Njenga. Thank you so much, and for your valued company as well. Lots of reactions on social media. We start for time. It is 8 on the nose, so we have to wind up. Jackie, she's chasing me away from studio, but a good conversation, and I think also we should continue with it. And yes, let's try and embrace our youth and understand them. They all call for understanding. Thank you for your valued company.